Yeah, wrong girl.
Wrong girl, really.
They're talking.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. We'll get started so we don't beat the snow that's apparently coming at the end of March. Yeah, you guys are happy about that, but so thank you all for coming. This is the last in our podium performance series for the season. We're going to cap off the season with the Atlantic Coaches Conference down in Halifax at the end of April, and then we'll be taking the summer off and brainstorming all kinds of great topics for you guys to start up again in September. But we are very pleased to end with this formidable panel of presenters to talk to you guys about parasport, getting involved as a coach, as an athlete, or as an administrator. And the way I envision it going, Courtney, so we've got Courtney Brennan here. She's the coordinator, the manager of the Para MB program here in New Brunswick. And she's going to give kind of a rundown about the program and the different areas that you can get involved. And then we'll have, we've got Dave Durapo and Sabrina Durapo. Most people are pretty familiar with them. And we have Eric Boucher here, who is with Badminton New Brunswick and has just pretty recently kind of dove into this world of para. So I think he'll be a really good resource for people who are interested in doing that as well on the coaching side. So we'll have each of these guys kind of tell their story about getting involved and how fantastic it is and the different directions it can take you. And then we'll just kind of open it up for questions, because I'm guessing that's what the interest is for a lot of people on the para side, is kind of where do I get started? And that's sort of the goal of what we're doing with this session here. So yeah, how's that sound? Does that sound like a plan? All right, well, I guess we will get started then. Courtney, you want to take it away?
Sure. So I'm Courtney Brennan. I'm the coordinator or manager for Para NB, Sport and Recreation. It's a fairly new program in New Brunswick. Just started last January, but it's growing quite quickly and rapidly with lots of good things happening. So I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about what's been happening in the last year, give you some examples of how to get involved, some of the sports that we have dealt with to do clinics and events, and just go from there. If you want to ask questions, feel free at any time. So we basically just work to engage as many New Brunswickers as possible with a physical disability in sport and recreation, so that includes mobility and visual disabilities. I work out of the New Brunswick Ability New Brunswick office, but my program, or Para NB, is overseen by a management team, so it's Ability New Brunswick, Canadian Sports Centre Atlantic, the Department of Healthy and Inclusive Communities, Sport New Brunswick, and Recreation New Brunswick. So para, sometimes there's this misconception that it's paraplegic, but it's actually parallel, so parallel sport opportunities. So for instance, Nicole's here with skiing, so para-skiing or adapted skiing, like using a sit ski or outriggers to do the same sport as the able-bodied participants. So I just act as a point of contact in New Brunswick for anyone who wants to get involved, whether it be a participant, a coach, a volunteer, a classifier, official. So work to engage those individuals by offering a course or working with other partners. So I work with provincial sport organizations, recreation organizations, municipalities, disability organizations, and any partners that are interested in getting involved, or individuals. So I often get a lot of info requests as well. How can I get involved? How do I get this piece of equipment? I have a son or a daughter that is interested in doing this. So giving them the right direction to get involved, or often connecting them. Like I know sometimes I get people interested in wheelchair basketball, so I usually copy Sabrina on my reply, and then they're directly connected to the right people, especially if they're in the Fredericton area. And also promotion of events and activities. So we had launched a social media, so Facebook and Twitter. And that seems to be a primary source of information that people will turn to find out what's going on. But also we send direct mail outs to Ability New Brunswick clients. So there are, 700 or 800 clients in New Brunswick with a mobility disability that get direct invitation to events and activities or clinics that are going on in the province. And try to plan to offer also accessible transportation, knowing that that's a barrier for people to get involved, and also help with providing additional support. So Eric did para-badminton clinics with us as a launch. First time it was done in Canada, and we did 6 in New Brunswick, 3 urban and 3 rural, I think. And we did 2 in Moncton, 1 in Fredericton, 2 in Bathurst. And we also offered occupational therapists to be there as additional support. So Eric was not familiar with coaching individuals who had a physical disability, but that support was there for him, so he could kind of coach to the sport and use his knowledge, but then the occupational or physiotherapist would help with adaptations that were necessary depending on someone's ability or how comfortable they were doing things to find a solution to make them successful. Also making people aware of funding opportunities, so both for organizations and for individuals. There's different funding options, and you can definitely contact me if you're interested in those options, both for individuals like the Provincial Recreation Access Fund. Often people will say, I want to get a gym membership just to stay active, so they can apply for that up to $250 a year. Sometimes different facilities such as the YMCA will subsidize that rate for them, and they can get involved to stay active. Other ones might use that money to buy a piece of equipment. So maybe they need a bocce set and they want to start a bocce club in Sussex, which recently was done. So I just act as that link for individuals, so whether it be participants, coaches, or volunteers, to link them. So we just recently had an event, and I'll talk about that as well, that we hosted this weekend. So I often will partner. So it's fairly rare to do, like we would always partner with a provincial sport organization associated with the parallel sports, so the able-bodied sport. So for sledge hockey, Hockey New Brunswick, skiing and the alpine, basketball, wheelchair basketball or New Brunswick wheelchair sports, or basketball New Brunswick. So different opportunities for coaches. Some of the different sports we've done to date, and there's a couple pictures there. The top right is from an athletics clinic that was done at CFB Gagetown, and Gabe LeBlanc has his club in Moncton, but they're also active in Fredericton and St. John, and he brought athletes with equipment for people to try, and we also had occupational therapists and physiotherapists there as support. And then the bottom picture is actually from last summer in June. Tennis Canada, Kai Schrammer came from Ottawa, he is, and 17 Tennis New Brunswick coaches came to take a wheelchair tennis coaching course. So Kai is specific to wheelchair tennis at Tennis Canada, and he offered this course in New Brunswick and in Nova Scotia. And so that certified a lot of different coaches in both provinces, and now those coaches can go back to their region within New Brunswick and they're certified, which has really helped development of tennis in New Brunswick, because we can now start a program in Fredericton, which is going on. St. John, that's started. Moncton happened last summer, and they're going to do it again this year. So bocce, skiing, goalball, para-badminton. Para-swimming is already involved. They have a para-swim coach, and they've had Janet Dunn come from Swimming Canada to do some sessions in Moncton. Wheelchair basketball, which has really been very successful in recent years and in the past, and continue to grow. So they're also offering grassroots programming for youth developmental camps, and as well as more competitive league play. Wheelchair rugby, mainly happening out of Moncton. And if you guys have specific questions on any of the different partnerships that we've had, or you're interested in establishing a partnership and formalizing that to move forward, to have an introductory clinic, or just a first contact experience to invite participants to come out and try your sport, then ParaMB would certainly be welcome to partnering with you to do that. The experience events that I had alluded to earlier. So we just had one on Saturday. In December, we partnered with the Canadian Paralympic Committee to do a Parasport Festival, which is what they have branded their events to be called, and we're going to be continuing to try to do these in New Brunswick. They're called ParaMB Experience Events. And it's just a chance to try anywhere between 15 and 20 different para sports or activities. It's a really positive atmosphere. Many of us were there. I know many of you around the table were there on the weekend too, and so you can comment on that as well. But there was both able-bodied participants as well as participants that had a disability trying the sport. It was inclusive, a really positive atmosphere, and you can get information on coaching, how to get involved and talk to the sports, but you really can't avoid trying it either, because you walk up and immediately people are asking you to, like, do you want to try, do you want to participate, and it's just a great way to try to involve someone as a first contact. And there's just some pictures there of previous participants at these events or clinics. So these are, we have a YouTube channel, ParaMB, and there's 5 videos posted to date. One includes Hal Merrill, his induction to the New Brunswick Sports Hall of Fame. There's one with phys ed teachers, and I actually have the one of Kai that I just spoke of, that was the Tennis Canada. Do we have internet, Megan?
I can set it up if you want to give me 1 minute.
Yep. I'll just play his interview for you. He comments quite a bit on coaching participants with a disability and just how easy it is to adapt. And I think I only had 2 other slides. Basically, my email address, how to get involved, social media, Facebook and Twitter, and then any questions that you guys might have. So there's one thing that I actually didn't include in my presentation, but it's coming along. So we're establishing a ParaMB equipment loan service. And this is going to be an opportunity for provincial sport organizations to contact us, hiring a coordinator to work part-time and loan equipment to different groups. So for instance, wheelchair basketball calls and says, you know, we have a tournament coming up and we would like to rent 5 additional chairs, and so we can coordinate that, or maybe you want it for the entire season. So there's a number of different equipment that we've ordered, and we're going to continue to grow and try to leverage more equipment as well as time goes on. And so that's something that you can look for in May to June, probably June 1st launch. So this is Kai.
My name is Kai Schrameyer.
Can you hear that?
I am the National Development Coach for Tennis Canada for wheelchair tennis. Been coaching on and off for a good 10 years now. I started coaching in my career as an athlete. My name is Kai Schrameyer. I am the National Development Coach for Tennis Canada for wheelchair tennis. Been coaching on and off for a good 10 years now. I started coaching in my career as an active competitive athlete. I volunteered with programs and got into it more seriously about 6-7 years ago when I did a development project for the International Tennis Federation, went to South America, helped to develop a program there.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm not sure why.
The internet connection
Is it the
isn't always
internet?
awesome in here.
It's awesome.
It's not always
Oh.
awesome. Very large concrete building.
Right. Well, maybe I can let that load and play it after. I'll just go back to my slides then, and I'll try again later. Anyway, you can go and visit it on the channel, and the address is there in the bottom address or the URL. And there's also some interviews with participants. So there's a young individual, Spencer Price. He talks about his involvement with all sorts of activities, basketball, tennis, anything that he's tried, skiing included. and then badminton as well. So he just talks about his experience, and I just found Kai's video to be quite relevant. So there's a Google Calendar as well if you're ever looking to see what's going on when. This one is just a screenshot from a couple months ago, but I try to keep that as updated as possible. So even if you're in Fredericton, you can see what's going on in St. John, and everything's listed. So say there's rugby practice on Sundays in Moncton, that's listed throughout their season. If you have anything you'd like me to post up there, I can put it up there and then promote it on social media, post it to Facebook, or send a direct email to my distribution list, which involves organizations, individuals, anyone who has contacted me to be on there. And so that list is continuing to grow every day. And then you can always sign up for that list and just be a part of all the information that's being circulated and find out where you want to get involved yourself. So that's it from me. Anybody have any questions? Trying to go back and play that video. I think I know everyone in here, except for a couple, and you say you're with soccer?
Correct.
With soccer?
Yes.
And what sport are you with?
Rowing.
With rowing. Okay. And who's in St. John? Anybody?
I hope they haven't been sitting there and not being able to hear us all this time.
We have five people here. I don't know if you guys want to. I'll get them to come up and introduce themselves.
Oh, they can't. Yeah.
How's it going, guys? My name's Craig Lang. I'm from Canoe Kayak, and we've got a few people around the table here. I guess there's 5 of us. And you guys want to, where are you going from?
He's the leader.
We got some people from Canoe Kayaks from the Torrent.
And Easter Seals.
And Easter Seals. So that is us. Thank you so much for having us. We're doing well. Do we have any questions at this point? We don't have any questions at this point, but probably at the end.
Okay.
Awesome.
It's good Josh is there.
Courtney, I have a question for you. The person you're hiring, is there any openness or willingness, or maybe you haven't thought of it, so I don't want to put you on the spot, you have to answer now, but the thought that, one of the thoughts we've had would be, it'd be great to have somebody, you know, it might be 20 hours in the year to work on para stuff. And, but I don't know if we have necessarily anybody, we don't have anyone maybe in our office that can take it on, just time-wise, and have the expertise. So I guess my thought was, it'd be great, you know, where you're hiring somebody part-time, if you guys could kind of look at considering, you know, well, maybe it's an extra hour a week that they work on alpine stuff, and maybe an extra hour that they work on fencing, and we would pay for that. Like, I wouldn't expect to have it for free unless you want to give it to us, that's okay, we'll take it. But, you know, I mean, can we find $2,000 in our budget to do something, or $1,000, something like that? Probably, right? Or we'll find that money to do that. So, anyway, I just kind of throw it at you. I wouldn't expect an answer now unless it's been discussed, but I think, to me, then you're hiring somebody that has the expertise and the knowledge and the connections. Why reinvent the wheel, right? So if, anyways, I just kind of throw that at you, because that would be of interest.
It'd be fantastic to have someone dedicated to para for each sport within your your provincial sport organization, absolutely. And like Para and me would be happy to work directly with them on their initiatives, absolutely. So yeah, I can talk to you about that further, but I think that applying for funding for that would be a good solution.
Yeah, okay. I think it'd be an
Probably have a
interesting,
solution for you.
you know, solution? Okay.
Yeah, it might not be something that like that Para and B specifically would take on as hiring that person, but this idea of pooling resources and the PSOs getting together to
Work as
to
a
continue to make
Well,
these things
that's-
happen.
I'm just
We're
thinking-
all over that.
Yeah, so it's, you know, where she's hiring somebody now, I think it's 20 hours or whatever I saw,
Yeah.
it's just a part-time.
And it's
Geez, if there was a
specifically-
couple of sports, you know, that
And you know,
would be cool.
all applications encourage partnerships, and and so like recently we applied to the Canadian Paralympic Committee for the sustainability of the equipment loan service, and gathered 14 letters of support from all of the different equipment we were going to be purchasing. And so if, for instance, skiing and rowing and, you know, soccer, whoever's here in the room decided to partner together and apply for funding, then maybe you would allocate some of that funding towards a personnel
Yeah.
to do the job, to focus on parent people.
Awesome.
Great. Well, we'll have lots of times for questions throughout. So who's up next?
I can go.
Alright.
My name's Dave Durpo. I got involved way back in 1988, I guess. I had a motorcycle accident at the age of 20, and I was very active in sport. It's funny how sport is a very small world. This gentleman on my right here, Eric, we grew up in the same neighborhood, and I probably haven't seen him since I graduated in '86, and since he'd been involved, you know, with Air Badminton, we've seen each other 4 or 5 times since. So it's good to. It's just funny how that happens through sport. Anyway, so motorcycle accident in '88, and I was very active in sports before my accident. Basketball, badminton, any sport really that was available to me, I tried. And then in '88 when my accident happened, I shortly got involved in wheelchair basketball. And it's so great, this is 24 years later, I guess, you never give up, I guess, but it's so great to have parasport festivals, Courtney working really hard in I guess, identifying kids out there that may have the same opportunity that I did 20-some years ago. For us, it's really hard to, as individuals, to get that information from schools or from parents. You know, it's that confidentiality kind of thing. So when parasport festivals happen, I was at the one in Moncton in December, and just this past Saturday, and the new faces that we see, it's just, I mean, you know, Sabrina and I are frothing at the mouth here because we're trying to identify wheelchair basketball players for our next Canada Games in 2015 in Prince George. So I think that having this is just absolutely wonderful. CPC is working really hard also, and you know, to maybe give some kid the same opportunity that Sabrina and I have had. You know, maybe someday make it to the Paralympics. Who knows, right? So to me, I'm really excited in this venture by everyone to make this happen for some young kid or some young adult. The best thing for us, and I'm not sure if people know this in this room, but with wheelchair basketball, and I can only speak of my sport because it's the best sport in the world. But and one of the most compelling things about wheelchair basketball is that anyone can play it. So if there's a young kid that's, you know, 10, 15 years old that's been injured or has had a disability from birth, they can get their friends, brother or sister, their parents even involved. We have one young kid that's from Hispanic Cis, that his dad just got recently involved in playing. He's able-bodied. There's not a thing wrong with him. And throughout Canada, people play the sport and they don't have anything wrong with them. When I first started playing in '88, I was kind of upset because we played at the Nashwaaksis junior high over here, and there was a box, a huge box that we stored our wheelchairs in. And I was asked to go to a practice for wheelchair basketball. So I went, and you know, I played a couple minutes in their practice, and after the practice was over, I went over to this box where everyone congregated after, you know, talked about their plays, and you know, there was some bragging rights, you know, whoever won that practice and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden I see this person, you know, get out of their chair, stand up, and put the chair over their head and put it in this box. I'm like, what the heck? Like, this didn't happen to me, you know, after my accident. And so then that's when I figured out that these people did not have anything wrong with them. And it's really cool to see, because when you have a young person that's just newly injured or has had a birth defect from an early age, you know, and they get to see their brother or sister or their mom or dad, sort of, it's a reverse integration into wheelchair basketball, you know, and have them go through the same kind of things that they went through when they were young, or what have you. It brings a whole new perspective to persons with disabilities. And so anyway, that's pretty cool from for a lot of different purposes. Yeah, so basically that's how I got involved and still am involved. And Sabrina and I have been named coaches for the next 2015 Canada Games in Prince George, as I mentioned before. Sabrina is the head coach, and I'll be the assistant coach if we can ever get our coaching certificates done. Yeah, like I said, I think this Parasport festivals are just awesome to see these new people come out and get involved, that have a disability or not. So it's great. Yeah.
So do you think it would be a reasonable strategy on the part of a sport to actually, especially when you're just starting out the para portion of your sport, to actually encourage able-bodied friends and family of the person who's disabled to actually come along and get involved?
Absolutely.
Because I never really thought of that as a strategy before, but it seems to me that, like we were thinking in fencing, that we would have, even if we only started with, you know, 1 or 2 disabled participants, that they could come and we could have some of our fencers, able-bodied fencers, sit down and fence with them, kind of thing. I'm not sure for fencers who don't have a connection with that person, how long they would be interested if they're used to moving around in fencing, and then wheelchair fencing, you basically sit still, and well, you're not still, but you're not moving the wheelchair, you're just, you know, moving your upper body. But maybe it would be more attractive to family and friends who want to help that person get integrated. I just never really thought of that as a promo, or, you know, a way of getting more people involved. So you see that as...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing it does is, you know, CPC is always, you know, on the podium. They want, you know, athletes to reach the podium and this kind of thing. I see it really benefit in other means also. When, say for instance, myself that has you know, a disability, when I play against someone that doesn't have a disability and they have all their muscle groups, right? I have to become a lot better to play against them, you know, just to keep up.
Yeah.
And so in Canada, I think that's why we've been so strong in wheelchair basketball in particular. Like the women, you know, they no one's ever done this in wheelchair basketball before, and I'm not sure very many sports, but in the late 90s, I guess. Well, 92. When did you treat me? 92 to
92, 96.
yeah. I mean, 3 Paralympic gold medals in a row. I mean, and that's mainly due to everyone in Canada playing against able-bodied players. I would say there's 40 to 50% of the players are able-bodied.
And why are the able-bodied people, though, so are these primarily people who get involved because they know somebody who is disabled that's involved? So it's not just someone off the street who says, oh, I'd like to play wheelchair basketball?
I think it begins with having them know somebody, but then, word of mouth, right? And,
It gets bigger.
Yeah.
and myself and other disabled athletes throughout the country go to schools and talk, to students, and most of them don't know that they can get involved. And
Yeah.
we bring our chairs there, they try it, and they're like, wow, this is cool. And then you get, 2 or 3 that way, and it just grows and grows and grows that way. So,
Because we, in parasport, especially wheelchair basketball, we often promote the sport as it's wheelchair basketball. The wheelchair is it's a piece of equipment that allows you to do the sport. So yes, initially there's a lot of, brothers, sisters, family, friends, and things like that decide, it helps with the transition for that individual, because, I often give presentations to kids and students where, they're shy about trying something new. They're afraid that they're going to look stupid. They're afraid that they're not going to be good enough. So having somebody there for moral support helps a lot. But then word gets around, and then all of a sudden, friends of friends want to start playing as well, and things grow. And for wheelchair basketball, it enables our league. If we didn't have able-bodied participants, we wouldn't have a league in the Maritimes. We have a league that is composed of, you look at our teams, and the majority of each team is 50% able-bodied, sometimes even more. So, and it starts that way. Sometimes it's athletes who, competitive athletes who get injured eventually, whether knees or hips or something like that, and decide, well, I don't want to stop playing, but hear about the wheelchair component, and it takes some time, but then, they try it once and then get hooked that way. I've heard it also in track, there was, what year was that, where there was a disabled athlete that was competing in the Boston Marathon, and his brother wanted to compete alongside of him, so he trained in a track chair. Well, just an able-bodied person's try. I don't know if you guys have seen a track chair before, but it's a little confined little space with your legs strapped underneath you and all that, and he wanted to do that. He trained, he went to the Boston Marathon, and when they crossed the finish line, he didn't win or anything like that, but he crossed the finish line, and it was this huge commotion because an able-bodied person was competing. I'm like, well, if he can do it, and it helps his brother, his cousin, or whoever have a training partner, then what's the harm, really and truly?
there was more media on that
Then the win.
the actual.
Yeah, that was the, so it helps with numbers, it helps gets programs off the ground, and some of those people turn into volunteers and coaches. And
So you were able to go directly into a program that was already happening, right?
Right.
Because one of the things that I'm a little bit worried about is we want to start wheelchair fencing, and we don't yet have any participants. So there's going to be somebody who's going to be like the first one.
there's
right?
always somebody who's the first one, though.
And I would like to speak with someone who has been the first one, and what were their needs, or what, do you know anybody who was like the first one that was involved in a sport as the wheelchair sport person and everybody else wasn't?
Well,
Like,
I think your closest fencer would be all the Quebec.
Yeah,
there's
Sylvia
a couple of them,
and
yeah.
Pierre.
Yeah, so CPC would be able to get in contact with them and see.
Well, Sylvie's already, I've been talking to her, I've known her for years
Oh,
anyway, because she comes to radio fencing stuff as well, and I've known her for a long time, and she's been sending me mostly information about wheelchairs, not about the people that are involved in it, so.
Yeah.
if traveling is not a problem, like if you can go, like there's a competition, there's multi-sport competition in Montreal coming up.
Yeah, in April,
26,
she's
yes.
trying to, she said, so are
And
you bringing
there's
some athletes? And I think she
a
hasn't
variety-
got anybody started yet.
A variety of sports there, and maybe like I've seen that organizing committee go to different events. Like they've been to the Paralympics to actually go and meet different and how to get that para component or add that new sport to their existing, you know, event. And it's a huge multi-sport event, one of the biggest. Well, I know for Canada for sure, but probably around the world. You've got people that come from countries all over the place. So if that's an opportunity for you, then maybe it's going to see and talking with some of those individuals there, you'll be able to see some athletes, you'll be able to see how they run things, you'll be able to talk to, you know, some coaches as well, and those are great resources when you're starting something from scratch.
And I
One thing I
know,
thought of, oh sorry,
no, you go
one
ahead.
thing I thought of is you probably want to steal some athletes from, you know,
A lot of
just start up
athletes
a
do a lot
program,
of
take some
sports.
basketball or wheelchair
Yeah.
guys that are involved and say, invite them to be some of your guinea pigs, right?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
actively involved, they might want to try something new.
And you've already done your initial clinic, Barb. You guys
Mhm.
had a success with that and partnered with Easter Seals, which was great. And I know that you had expressed concern over, you know, how do we run a program with just one participant? And you have to start somewhere.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's only going to be one person, and that's okay. Because it might take, you know, if there's nobody, then it's never going to grow. But if there's at least one person that will grow, they'll talk to
They'll
someone.
talk to.
And it will grow, and it might take some time, and it might not. Like it,
Or we
Yeah.
should check, because we have one athlete right now that we've discovered this year, or she discovered us, or however it worked, and we kind of had this vision of how it was all gonna unfold, and it's totally gone another way, but that's okay, right? So, but yeah, we should chat, and she may be somebody you wanna talk to as well. You're making me kind of jot things down. She's 20,
Yeah.
and I was sharing with them earlier that at one point I'm trying to do all this stuff, and I went, she's 20 years old. She lives on her own. She's very independent. Like, she can do some of this stuff that we tend to do for
them, yeah.
kids. But I'm like, she's not a kid, right? So, so you're making me kind of question, and I've got to talk to Crystal and say, okay, well, what can we do better, and what can we do?
Yeah.
She might be an idea.
And the other thing that, you know, came a little bit out of the weekend was, you know, when we looked at people who were the variety of age groups ages that were trying the sport. And, you know, even with able-bodied fencing, obviously we don't have 9-year-olds and 25-year-olds practicing together. And so you will want to be, just from a social point of view, have programs that are interesting for that age group, right? And so then we're sort of thinking, well, you know, when we offer a specific wheelchair fencing program, I don't want to think that we're going to have a 9-year-old and a 25-year-old in the program, right?
But that might happen, and that's one of the things that I was going to address
And how does that
a little
work,
bit
you
in
know?
my presentation.
We're dealing with that right now.
That is, unfortunately, that's the reality of parasport. You have people that have acquired disabilities through birth. You have those who acquire disability through an accident or anything like that. So you can get somebody, like I get people in my program. My youngest in my Canada Games program is 12 years old. My oldest is 19 because my Canada Games program in 2015, they have to be 24 and under in order to participate.
Right.
And I, as a coach, have to make that appealing for all the different groups. And it is different, different and also difficult in the sense that you want to segregate sometimes, but you want to promote inclusion other times as well. So at the beginning, my first year coaching, it was very important that everybody understand that there's clear roles, there's clear responsibilities for each. Every disability has something to bring, but the role varies. And understand that on one team, I need people of different roles. For a team sport, that clarity is very, very important. Individual sport, there's a social aspect. I remember I used to, when I first started, I played wheelchair tennis. Like that was another sport that I took up, and you know, we had, you know, I was 20 at that time. We had 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, and we had really young people, and you know, you kind of make that work because you still have something in common, right? It's still a social setting where, you know, you're participating in an activity. And for those people, you know, I get kids at 20 with a disability that have never done sport before. They don't have fundamental movement skills. You know, I'm teaching them how to dribble, I'm teaching them how to catch, I'm teaching them how to pass. They've never been exposed to that. So there's a wide spectrum, but it is doable, and there's a lot of tools out there to help and understand. But it's scary at sometimes. Like sometimes you kind of wonder, like as a coach, I'm constantly questioning myself, like am I doing right by the 12-year-old? Am I doing right by the 20-year-old? And now I'm to the point where everybody understands the value of everyone and the level of ability and disability of everyone. And now I'm to the point where I can, when I do practices, they're more custom. Like I'll have this group, we're not really divided according to age, we're kind of divided according to ability level. You're at this stage of your career right now, so we will work on these skills. You guys are at this level, and you guys are at this level. So now it comes capacity a little bit more, where I have to surround myself with people like, it's me, it's Dave, we have one of our managers that wants to start coaching as well, who's planning on taking his coaching certification. So, but I kind of teach the skills, and we work as a group, and we're going to have that little segregation.
Once they have their basic skills, then the age starts to matter less. Because it's more about the activity and not so much about feeling a part of, like just feeling like you can belong. When you don't have any skills, I think the feeling of that you get from the other people that are there is more important, because you don't know the sport that well, so it's not the same thing. So that's, I guess, again, where I'm thinking, you know, are we going to be able to create an atmosphere that is comfortable enough when they're first starting, that they feel that it's enjoyable to come to, and they don't feel like they don't belong.
Yeah, and I have my discussions with my younger ones, I have my discussions with the older ones, and at the beginning it was a question of, you know, the ones that have been there a while, and talking to them, and, you know, making them understand that, yeah, we might be taking a couple steps backwards right now, but in the long run, we will get to where we want to go, and trust me on that. And making sure that we have open communication, you know, and I make sure that, you know, I'm constantly doing fun little activities for my young ones, you know, and having those discussions, you know, how are they feeling? And, you know, the first time I took my 12-year-old, he was 10 at that time, and I'm bringing him into a tournament with a bunch of 17-year-olds, and I'm like, you sure you're ready for this? You know, and we had the conversation with the parents too, like the parents, you know, they're like, well, I trust you, and I'm like, you know, and then I go to Dave, I'm like, am I doing the right thing here? And, you know, but that's our reality as well, you know, like, I often have debates with other provinces that are much bigger, and, you know, can tell the 10-year-olds they have mini basketball leagues and they can play mini basketball and then graduate through the ranks, but unfortunately we don't have that here. Up to a few years ago, we only had an A and a B league, and everybody plays in that. Right now, since being appointed as the Canada Games coach, I've realized that, okay, there's something missing. Kids can't just kind of join with the adults and hope this happens. And, you know, para is special in a way that, well, sport, when you arrive in something, whether you're going to continue or not, is often dependent on if you're going to have a good first experience. Like, that is the first thing we learn. They've got to have a positive experience to start out with, or else they're out the door. They're on to something else. And we were realizing that, you know, why are we not getting kids? You know, and I'm like, well, because there's nowhere for them to go, really and truly. So since being appointed, I'm kind of taking on a lot of grassroots and participating with Courtney at Para and B experiences and para sport festivals, and, you know, I'm getting calls from different areas. I've got kids in my areas, can you come meet with them and give us a clinic and things like that. And at this point, I've kind of broadened my mandate to say, because that's what's important right now. Grassroots is important, or else there won't be involvement at a Canada Games level eventually. So I'm kind of doing little baby steps everywhere in hopes that eventually we have enough kids out that, you know, because New Brunswick has never had, like, for wheelchair basketball, a selection camp. go to fan games. They just pick whoever's there, you get to go. This is the first time ever that we have enough kids that Dave and I are dreading the selection process. It's great, but at the same time, like, breaking those little hearts is gonna tear me apart. But, it's a great problem to have, and it's growing, so it's better that way. Sure.
And it's great that, we have multi-sports around the table, because not everyone's interested in wheelchair basketball. And right now, in the past, that's all they've had, for the most part. And so, if you have someone that's not interested in playing wheelchair basketball and they enjoy fencing, well, that's a good thing. We're not, we're pro basketball, but I mean, we just want someone to be involved in something. When I give my presentations at school, I don't push wheelchair basketball on these kids. I push sport, or
try something new.
Just try something different. Whether it be academics or whatever. Just get involved in something.
I think we lost St. John. We're working on remedying the situation, so sorry for the commotion.
Are your presentations usually to the entire student body, or do you focus on the parent athletes and stuff?
I'd share a story. There was a little boy that came to the experience on Saturday, and just this would speak to doing it to the whole student body, because he was about 7, and he came in, just his soccer jersey, and he'd just come from his able-bodied soccer practice, but he had said, "Dad, there's an event in Oromocto, and I want to go check it out," and he got there, and, just talking to the dad, how did you hear about the event, he didn't have a child with a disability, a family member, or anything. He said, my son said to me, "Dad, I've got this friend, and he's in a wheelchair at school, and he doesn't really have any friends, but he's like my best friend, and he's going to do all these activities that are going to be there today, so I want to go check them out." And he stayed all afternoon. So there's an able-bodied kid that might not have had a presentation at school, but had he heard of this, then he would go and do something similar. So it's important to share it with all.
That's what I was asking.
We actually, I keep looking at Sabrina and Dave, kind of chuckling, because last year I was teaching middle school phys ed, and they came in and did a workshop for 5 classes. They went all day, bless their hearts, and grade 8 and grade 6 kids, and they ate it up. And the reason I knew they ate it up, because when I went home that night, Taylor was my daughter, and she was one of them. Was one of her grades, and it was all over Facebook. So I was like, yes, they loved it, and they were, they kept asking me, are they coming back? And it was phenomenal, because we didn't have any in the 5 classes. We didn't have any students with a disability, and so they all got to try it. And it was a lot of what you talked about. Like, we had some very good, strong basketball players in some of the classes, but they were no better than Taylor, who's not a basketball player, right? So it was really fun for everybody, and it took away the kids that weren't sporty and they're not very athletic. They were having just as much fun as the others. So it's really neat to.
It's true. It
it's
also
really cool.
puts everybody
Everybody's
on the same playing field,
yeah.
which is good. And it's funny because I've had 2 girls now, one who's part of our Canada Games program, and come to us and say, "I've never been good at sports at all. Like, I never fit in. I was the kid that was made fun of, and so pulled back from sport, and then all of a sudden tried wheelchair basketball once, and now she's training her little heart out. She's one of my most dedicated players." And
Don't cut her.
And she's grown so much due to this, and it's amazing. Like, it's built her confidence. She got bullied one week at school because some of the kids found out she was playing wheelchair basketball, and they said, well, you must be lazy or something. And so she said, no, and they really thought that, why you're not good at able-bodied sports, that's why you have to go play wheelchair and all this type of stuff. And then, so Dave and I said, well, we'll go give a presentation in school, and we'll get the chairs out, and they can come and try and see how good they are, and then she'll be the shining star.
She'll knock him over a couple of times.
Yeah. So it's cool that way because it increased awareness, and some have actually those school mates came to a tournament that we had in her area. We had a tournament, they came out and they came and watched, and it just changed their perception of what the sport was. So.
It's interesting, we did have one guy that started wheelchair fencing in the Moncton Club. He built his own wheelchair frame, or figured out how somebody could build it for him. And he was only there for about a year and a half, but at the end of his first season, we actually had a wheelchair competition at our provincial championships, I think, or whatever. And so he was the only actual disabled person, but we had about 5 other fencers who signed up to fence the wheelchair fencing thing, and they had a great time. And even now, like when they heard that we were doing this, they said, oh yeah, I remember when I fenced down in Moncton, it was so much fun. And so it's interesting that, the able-bodied fencers had a great time, and it was challenging for them,
Well, I often say to people, able-bodied people who try wheelchair basketball, I say you'll discover muscles you never thought you had.
Yeah.
Really, truly, they thought, so sore 2 days later, and I was still sore, and I'm in shape, what's going on? Yeah, it's different muscle groups,
Yeah.
so it's just different training, really. Yeah.
Yeah, if anybody wants great stories about Dave Deerpo's 5-year-old, look right after that. My involvement, I guess, in sport, again, Dave and I grew up together, so very active, very active. And then I kind of took maybe a route that I see a lot of hockey parents take, in the sense that I went to university, played badminton there, and then played a little bit after, coached a little bit of high school, and then along comes the child. And then the child goes to school and starts participating in the school programs, and then all of a sudden I kind of rediscover the interest, and seeing her succeed, as all of us tend to do with our kids. It's very important. However, I have this thing, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it 110% and dedicate it a lot of time. And where I wasn't a great badminton star by any stretch of the imagination, I did take coaching very, very seriously, and did my certifications and traveled, particularly in Ontario and out west, made some contacts, and took all the multi-sport clinics that were offered at the time by Coaching Brunswick and everything, and developed my base of knowledge, and went that route. Eventually got involved a number of years ago with badminton in Brunswick, coached at the club level, and then went to Canada Games in 2011. So over the years I've coached everything from my daughter in middle school to some of the best young players in Atlantic Canada, and each one is different, and each one revolves. As they get better, then you become less of a coach. As they're younger, you kind of play with them a little bit, and the fact that I wasn't a great badminton champion, kind of doesn't become much of a factor. But when you get dealing with a certain caliber of player, of course, now the coach in you, how do you challenge that athlete? How do you push that athlete? So that was my coaching involvement. Then about a year ago, Badminton New Brunswick was approached, I believe, about doing some para-badminton. Now, para-badminton is very popular in Northern Europe, popular, like badminton in general, just about everywhere in the world except North America, which is unfortunate. But Badminton Canada saw, why not? It's probably on the docket for para Olympics, probably not in 16 or
Yeah, I'm trying.
yeah, they're trying to go. So I was approached by Badminton New Brunswick to do this. So it became really interesting. So relatively speaking, I'm quite a novice in the area of parasport. I coached for a number of years, had the challenges of, of challenging particular athletes, breaking hearts, always miserable task. To tell a player that, yeah, you're good, but you're not good enough, and then the fallout from that, very difficult part of the coaching experience. So when we got involved with para badminton, and I went to see Courtney shortly before the first session. So how do we deal with this? Because I had no experience. I knew the game of badminton, and I had gotten the boss, so to speak, but it was really challenging and really interesting. How we're going to turn this into something that the participants would enjoy. So we decided to do a camp type of style, because one of the things that we wanted to bring to the experience is that you're going to come and learn to play badminton, but you're going to have an athletic camp here, and this is para badminton. It is not because you are disabled, because you're able-bodied. No, this is so I brought my whistle, and we had specific drills, and we did some multi-feed drills, and the occupational therapist turned into the coaches to an extent, because they were, had 20 shuttles lined up, and they were feeding shuttles, and we ended up having a lot of success with that, because it gave them a nice experience. So we kind of built on that over the last year in each area, and like I say, I'm a relative rookie to this area, so but in the end, it becomes the same thing. So each individual athlete, and we were very careful to refer to them as athletes, because on this day, you are now an athlete, and you're a badminton athlete. And whether you have never played before or held a racket, that doesn't matter. So one of the first things that struck me in Fredericton is how, just like an able-bodied athlete will adapt to some of their strengths. Some players can jump. Some kids that I've coached, even the elite players, just shouldn't jump. So it's no different. Some para-athletes or some of the people that came were able to do certain things. And as a coach, the important thing was to learn, okay, how do you see that? And then how do you adapt to it? And then have that cooperation with the athlete, and have them tell you, because it isn't, I don't have to sit back here and analyze. No, you have the discussion, and you open it up and say, all right, now we need to have you hit the shuttle, and this becomes an effective way. Now, how are you going to? And those are the discussions we were having right there on the spot, and had a lot of fun with it. And I guess the last point I want to make is that the success for each individual. I guess in December when we went to Moncton, so I got to play with Dave, which was a lot of fun, because from a movement standpoint, obviously, he's a high performance athlete, international caliber, so movement isn't a problem. But what was fun is how we could adapt some of the shots, and that side of it. And I guess that became the challenge, and that became the fun part. And we were talking earlier about able-bodied people playing. Well, I got to play with some of the athletes, and let me tell you, yeah, my swing is pretty decent, and my movement, and you want to understand how somebody like an athlete can move. That was a lot of learning for me, and sure, yeah, I probably had a best serve there, but if you can't get somewhere, and it was a blast. I think able-bodied people that play a parasport, whether it's basketball, it's the tool. We happen to use rackets. They happen to have the ball, but it's a tool in the movement. So I'm still in the learning process, and every time I do a session, I do a little session with Josh's group in St. John, And we had a delightful little boy, 11, 12 years old, that was mute and was unable to communicate in a traditional sense. And you know, and how do you show how to hit or how to do certain things and not be able to verbalize that? And yes, there was somebody there that was you know, signing, but in the end, you know, his eyes were on me, or my spouse that helps me, my wife Geraldine, that helps me a lot. From a coaching standpoint, the principles stay the same, and now you just have to be a little creative and see what is his success. So some of the people that we had, their success was making a consistent contact. You know, success for Dave would be to do something completely different. Recognize that, deal with it, and then build on that. Fortunate to have the coaching background to be able to do that, and then even more fortunate to be able to have that type of athlete, you know, to be able to really expand. So like I said, I'm a rookie, still learning, but it's been an absolutely phenomenal experience so far.
Eric did a fantastic job at all the clinics that 6 different ones that we went to, and he was in a chair for the majority of the time, just so that he could completely relate to what he needed to teach, and it was great that you were open to doing that, and you just adapted so quickly. I mean, there were some participants that had a shuttle hanging on a string because they might not have had the dexterity with the racket and what they needed to consistently learn how to hit a shuttle, and so that was their starting point, and that's like quickly those adaptations were made, and it took me no time to think of creative ways to make that happen. So
Did you have any issues with people coming to try the sport that perhaps just didn't have the physical capabilities to actually do it?
Yep.
Like, one of the things that I don't know anything about really is, you know, are there certain people who you need to, and I think classifiers do this or something, to actually test them to see whether they actually have either the, you know, the stability in their abdominal muscles or the extension of their arm or whatever, or their dexterity in their fingers. How does that all happen?
Well, I tell you, I run an adult badminton club on Tuesday nights at Saint Michel, at the school at St. John. And to be quite honest with you, there are some that come, God bless their hearts, they come after work and they come and they're there for a little exercise, and you know, it's not always, you know, it's not always something they're going to probably continue on, but they're giving it a try. And I saw over the years, and some kids that I've dealt with, that I'm sure they're wonderful students, and badminton or a lot of other sports might just not be their cup of tea, and they'll succeed in many other things. And I brought that to the table a little bit. So there are potential athletes. Not potential. There are, you know, they try anything. I mean, I'm sure if we went out and you know, anything, and you deal with those people, and you put them here, and you say, okay, now the game of wheelchair basketball, or wheelchair badminton, sorry, is kind of a quarter court, half court type of thing, and those are the ones that you look forward to. And we had some of those kind of people that come out, and those are the ones that you want as quickly as possible. Give them the opportunity to play real badminton. And then we have some that are there to experience something, and you recognize that, and you make sure that their experience is as full as possible. And there's no way, but realistically, that they're going to compete, or they're going to move to the level they can compete with somebody like Dave, you know, who's a natural athlete. So now the challenge is, okay, how do I make the most of their time and give them experience? And that became the fun challenge, and that's the one. I mean, some people have a great hand-eye coordination, and some people will never be able to take an 18-inch racket and hit a court with. It's just not going to happen very well. But if you do it right, they still have a very pleasant afternoon, and they still have a level of success. And that was the challenge, and that was you know, it became a little bit of a, thank God my wife was great, because she would come out and we would double up and make sure that everyone had something that they were going to, you know, potentially succeed at, whether it was playing a full game, you know, and really literally playing, all right guys, these are the rules, now you guys are able to hit, you're able to move, all right, let's go, and then you kind of coach that side of it. Or someone with, you know, with some disabilities such that just hitting the shuttle was kind of a little bit of a hit and miss proposition, but every time they did, that was fantastic, because they hit 2 in a row, and that was like 50% or 100% improvement, and then they hit 3 in a row, and it was exciting. It was
So, but are those, I guess I'm trying to imagine, I mean, that's in a camp situation, right? Now, are those people that are having difficulty, are you still looking to encourage them to come to your club and continue on? Because
well,
I suspect
we still have to develop that side of badminton. Like I say, badminton is relatively new, and you know, it's a matter for us to incorporate in some of these clubs, you know, an opportunity for some players to come out.
I mean, you want people to come in who really are going to feel like this is going to be a really enjoyable experience for them,
yeah.
Preferably over a long period of time. Whether they ever compete or not, they just have fun and they enjoy it and they feel skillful enough that they can enjoy the activity, right?
But I think that's relatively, you know, in any type of situation, you're gonna basically have that. So I have my adults that come out after work and eventually, you know, they'll make a decision. I'm going to get better, and this is something that I want to do, or this is frustrating beyond belief, and it just isn't going to.
So it's their decision, not yours.
Ultimately, in a camp type situation, we want everybody to come out and try and see, and then ultimately, you know, I would love to play, you know, volleyball, but it just isn't going to happen because I suck, In a camp type situation, I would go out and have some fun with it, but to compete or to even, you know, participate, I would frustrate myself into the ground. So
I'm not sure if fencing has a classification system or not.
It does,
Yeah,
yeah. In terms of competition, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So wheelchair basketball does also, and that's the probably the most. It's tough as coaches because with wheelchair basketball you have 5 players on court and they have to add up to 14, 15 points. So it gives a great opportunity for someone that has a greater disability to compete against a person that has the same disability on the other team. So I guess if you would find 2 people that have the same disability, then it would be very interesting to them, right? Because you're competing against someone on the same playing field.
Yeah.
In the beginning, that might be tough, but
there are going to be some people who have disabilities to the point where they're not going to be able to take part.
Yes,
Like
and
we
that
had, you know,
happens.
one person who, as soon as the mask went on Saturday, it was like, get this off me. Like,
Yeah.
you know, they were having a panic attack. So, I mean, for that person, it wasn't even anything physical, really. It was more an emotional thing, like, oh, I can't wear this mask.
yeah.
It
And
happens,
you know.
and you know, like I think Eric was saying, like if it happens in a clinic situation, like it happened. Like I went to give a clinic in Bathurst, and it was very small in numbers and things like that. But and there was one person there that, you know, her disability level was higher to a point that I wouldn't be able to teach her basketball. I was teaching her more kind of like more life skills, like catching, holding, you know, different things like that. Will she continue to be a basketball player and join a league? No. You know, often they will have, you know, they'll discover that by themselves. There are situations, and I anticipate, like I've seen that. I started coaching when I was, I used to live in Montreal, and we started a program there, and we were faced with this child who had a very severe disability, and he could barely push a manual chair. And at the beginning, like everybody said, no, he can't continue his disability level, and wheelchair basketball allows us, you know, different roles. So I knew that there was a role that we could give him. If he wanted that role, that was up to him. But that was the role that we could give him. and it was shot. I moved to New Brunswick in 2004, so I never knew what actually happened to this individual. And I got the surprise of my life. I saw him at the 2011 Canada Games. He was there in Quebec, and he made the team, and you know, he decided that that was his role, and he was okay with that role, and he became great at it. And it was actually funny because last second play they decided to actually toss him the ball to see if he could, you know, he tries sometimes, and he actually made it that time, and it was like a shot out of, you know, where it came out, we don't know, but you know, they gave him that opportunity, and you know, he'll probably never live that experience ever again, but he accepted that role. He could have been one of those individuals who have said, no, you know, that's, you know, I want to move on to other sports. And I've had that discussion. Like, I had one kid that was, you know, he wasn't a team player at all. Like, you could tell that he was an individual sport person, and there was no getting team concept or anything like that. And I had the discussion. It was a very hard discussion to have, but to say, you know, yes, you can stay here and you can continue, but I think you will shine a lot better and you'll enjoy yourself much more in this atmosphere. And I introduced him to something else. I introduced him to a track coach, and he continued on into track, and he shined. And sometimes that discussion is hard, and whether it's because of ability level or not, like Paris Sport Festival in Moncton, I got this list of all people who are interested in wheelchair basketball. And on my list, I had one that had visual impairment. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to have this conversation that, you know, that might not be the sport for you type of thing? So, and I had that, and I think it was three individuals that were in electric power chair, and wheelchair basketball has to be able to manual chair and things like that. And you have to have that discussion. You kind of, you know, test, you know, okay, what's your level of disability? Are you able to push a manual chair? And you kind of push them towards that realization for themselves sometimes. And then there's the hard conversation where, you know, if they don't realize it themselves, you've got to do that, because I don't think we're going to bring any benefit to that individual by, you know, just letting them come out every week and not being able to do much.
And are there any concerns around the sort of their medical needs and possible injuries, like in terms of if like in the case of our provincial coach who was coaching in France, he said that the parasport experience that was done here, he said you would never see that in France. What you would see is this kind of experience would take place in what he's, and whether this is true or not, this is what he spoke with me about, was that this introduction to the sport would take place in a medical type facility, like a rehab center or whatever. So the coaches would actually go to those centers and maybe do some fencing or whatever, but it would always be guided by a medical assessment of some sort.
That happened.
And he was really surprised that that wasn't happening here. Like, he just thought, oh, like, and so, and maybe he just didn't want to be the person who had the conversation with this person saying, well, you know, I don't think this is going to work for you in fencing. And maybe he just wanted to push that off to somebody else. I don't know.
I guess that as you know, the idea of a parasport experience is to expose people to all of the opportunities, and not necessarily to let them know that they can or cannot do whatever the sport is, or you know, let them know what their abilities are, but they'll soon discover that on their own, like Sabrina said, and they'll find something they really enjoy. You know, different sports have different classifications, and they are according to specific individual disabilities. So for instance, like wheelchair rugby, mostly people who classify in are people with quadriplegia or cerebral palsy. Bocce, it's governed by CCPSA, the Canadian Cerebral Palsy Sports Association, and so a lot of that classification system deals with. And so I guess keeping it a positive experience at what happened on Saturday, you know, it's just an opportunity for them to try. It's the same thing as being able-bodied, so it's okay for an able-bodied person to try. It's okay as someone that has a more extreme disability than someone else to try, and they'll discover for themselves what they like, what they think they're
But there's
good
no
at.
medical concerns then or anything, like, I mean, even with fencing, I mean, if somebody comes in and says that, you know, they can't, like an able-bodied person, they have really bad knees, I will say to them, this is probably not the best sport for you. Because it's very demanding on the knee joints.
You're getting people to voluntarily come to your club, so if they feel comfortable doing so, you can, I'm sure, ask them if there's any medical concerns, like continue to follow your policy, whatever it is at your club, and I mean, the policy should be the same and apply.
And it's not uncommon with the example you gave, like in Europe and things like that, that often it's done in a medical setting. That's how Paralympics originated, from a medical setting. The doctor who decided eventually that, you know, we wanted to do something for the paralyzed veterans and things like that. So their philosophy in you know, even like wheelchair basketball teams, they travel with a doctor, and you know, like the doctor has to assess them, and it's kind of,
It's
it's
much
just
more
a
of a
different
medical model
yeah,
than in Canada.
Yes, very much so a medical model versus here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
different philosophy in that sense.
Okay, so it's just different from a philosophical point of view.
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting.
Do you guys have any other questions?
By the way, if your sports, you get people sign up for a digital, like one of those perfect.
I'm interested in the soccer side of things, like just where or how wheelchair soccer fits in. Like I've never seen anything with it involved or how it would work, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know that it's ever existed in New Brunswick. I'd love to explore that. You know, power soccer is one of the most popular sports that you hear of in, like, Ontario, I know has it, and different, and in the States they have it, so I'd be certainly open to working.
Okay, so if I touch
towards
base with
something.
you, we might be able to.
Yeah, and you're
See?
with Soccer New Brunswick, and we can connect with someone with the expertise to bring them in from somewhere and try to get some education going, or
Yeah, I find too that electric wheelchair users get lost between the cracks.
Mhm.
So if they don't really have a sport like that's I know bocce, they can play bocce, but wheelchair sports is always to me I don't know, but it's always like in a manual chair, right? So I think like power soccer would be, you should get some pretty good numbers, because parents really don't know what to do with their child that's in a power chair, and what to do with them. They can't, some can, some can't, but I mean it's hard for them to play wheelchair basketball or any contact sport.
Right.
Really get them in their power chair that they're used to using every day. I mean,
have you seen any videos on it or anything?
No, I've kind of come before I was coming here. I was kind of wondering, and I did a little search, but I didn't come up with a lot. But I didn't really look for power soccer specifically.
It's interesting and competitive, and I think it would be very good to do in New Brunswick. There's a lot of individuals, potential participants, so
Okay, well I'll touch base with Soccer Brunswick and then
yeah.
touch base with you guys. I think it'd be neat.
That's one of the things I want to say today, that like it's scary when you want to try and get into something and you don't know what's out there and things like that. There are a lot of like training tips and things like that for different disability groups and stuff on YouTube, like doing searches on that. That's huge. Physical health in Canada, or PHE Canada. I only know the acronym. PHE Canada has some tools, actually, some teaching fundamental movement skills to either people with physical disabilities, cognitive disabilities, learning disabilities. They have videos and manuals that you can order, and I'm actually reading them right now to do some better assessments and things like that. So there are tools out there that are available, like how to teach somebody with cognitive disability on, different things and whatnot. So there are tools out there. There are resources. There are resources also from other provinces. Like Courtney said, there are possibilities to actually get people from other provinces to come and educate a little bit in New Brunswick on different programs and things like that. I'm going to put my work hat on now. I work at the Department of Healthy and Inclusive Communities. I'm with the Sports and Rec branch. I'm the new Go and Be coordinator. So you probably heard about a funding grant. Has anybody here not heard about Go and Be before? No? Okay, so Go and Be this year is based on physical literacy, and there is a regional grant and there is a provincial grant. The regional grant, there is up to $1,500 that can be given, or more, up to $5,000 I believe, for initiatives for persons with a disability. So you can get funding through that, and funding can be, there's a percentage on equipment, there's honorariums, there's, you need to get somebody to come and educate, coaching, any sort of resources that you would need to offer to help with your club program or anything like that. You can communicate with the regional consultants. If you don't know who they are, if you search on the department's website, the Go and Be, like guidelines and applications are all up there. My phone number is up there as well. If you want my phone number, I can give you my phone number. If you have any questions, up to $5,000 you can get from a regional level. From a provincial level, if you are a PSO, you can get up to $10,000 for a parasport initiative. So let's say you're working with soccer and you want to get something going. You need to fly somebody in here. You want to get coaches certified. You want to do some promotional materials. You want to have a clinic to start with. Those are all things that we can fund for you. One of the things that we are looking at, though, is sustainability is a key piece of Go and Be. We like Pair and Be experience events as long as there's something where the participants can go. In the past, there's areas where they would offer para-sport festivals. You would go to a remote area where there's nothing available, introduce them to a bunch of sports that are not available in their area, and then they basically sit at home and wait until you come and do another one next year. So right now, Pair and Be is doing a really good job at offering para experiences where they can try different things, but we're also looking at the sustainability piece, and so what's available in their area, what they can participate in, things like that. Because it would be great if we can get every sport in every area, but that's not reality. So we've got to go with what's available and things like that, make sure that they're exposed to different things and whatnot, and grow programs in different areas. I'm not saying that, okay, there's only wheelchair basketball in this area, we're just going to focus on that. But we do want to make programs sustainable in those areas. So we're all for getting something started, whether that's busing, new people in, whether it's, finding a location that is suitable for everyone, and things like that. So that is a huge piece. And as I said earlier, Go and Be is a lot about physical literacy skills, but in terms of there's one category, it's basically one category is underrepresented groups, with para groups all under. And it's much wider. Go and Be for able-bodied populations is basically the 3 first stages with it, which is active start, fundamentals, and learn to train. Whereas underrepresented populations, we're much wider spectrum, and we can have all the different stages. And we do understand that at a para level especially, we can get a 30-year-old at an active start or fundamentals level. That is just the reality of the sport, para sport. Therefore, there's a lot more flexibility in terms of that. So if there's any questions with regards to that, Courtney can help you. I can certainly help you. I have been approached to go and give, as a result of this one, to go and give clinics a little bit everywhere. I've committed to doing that. That's my other hat now. But if there are any resources that I can help you find or anything like that, you're looking in terms of equipment, I can certainly help with those things as well. So, but there is funding out there to be able to get initiatives going. So It's a new 3-year bilateral. The first year just is finishing. New applicate. We're done spending for this fiscal, but April 1st, whole new load of money coming around. So
And
make
that's
sure to take
also,
note of that.
Sabrina, a great opportunity for partnership.
Yes.
Like especially for instance, cross training. So if you have a summer sport and a winter sport and you want to pair up and so you have a participant that's going to be active for life at all seasons, then they're going to be able to, access and get involved a little bit more. So.
And that's a great point, because GoMB would love to see, the federal government would love to see multi-sport applications. In New Brunswick, we don't tend to do multi-sport applications. It's usually single sport oriented. I think for the first bilateral, I think I've got one application. It's basically at an active start, kids level that we see that. But there are partnerships that can be done at a higher level.
Now, does that affect the amount of funding? So if it's two PSOs coming together, is that $20,000?
Possibly.
Okay, but there's no right now definition.
No, there's no definition. It's $10,000 for a PSO to be able to apply. So if you're
creative and have a good plan, okay.
Yeah, we're looking for creative, and we're looking for good plans. No, there's regional money. Yeah, because there's regional money too, right? So to support those local clubs, and then because there was a great example that came from wrestling actually. They have a really good club base, and they also have a really good PXO, and they've come up with a plan and an implementation plan that involves all their clubs, in terms of recruitment, in terms of going out to schools, so they're doing some work, so they're getting some money at the regional level. The PSO is getting money at the provincial level as well to make sure this happens. So, because there's staff and all that type of stuff. So there's, they're making the most out of their money to be able to reach a broader audience. So that's, that was the best plan that we saw, really a multi-level happening, and that would be great. We don't see this very often.
But that's not a multi-sport thing, so I still am not quite sure.
Well, multi-sport, for example, a para, like, I'll take a para and you can combine a program where, wheelchair basketball and wheelchair tennis can partner up with badminton. And we decide that, we're offering 6-week program twice a week, and we're offering, these 3 sports. That becomes multi-sport application, where you're exposing people that normally wouldn't be exposed to all these sports, and you have 3 partnerships going on.
And why do you think this is a good thing?
Because fundamental movement skills, because it's physical literacy, we want to make sure that physical literacy is basically, we've got land sport, there's court, there's water, there's like for example, there's run, jump, throw, for example, from Athletics Canada. So if you combine a program like that with a program like Steve Nash Youth Basketball, well, they're learning the skills of dribbling, catching, passing. Whereas run, jump, throw, you are learning how to run properly, jump properly. So you're basically making sure that the children are getting physical skills that can be good for a wide range of sports. Instead of the early specialization route that we used to take, where we said, okay, right now you're tall, for your age, you're going to play basketball, and that's all you're going to do. And then growth spurt's over, and all the other kids are taller now, and he's left with nothing. That's what that's what Sport Canada is trying to go away from, and that's why the long-term athlete development models from different sports are really there to make sure that we're teaching our children all the skills that they need to be successful in, and that they can pick the direction that they want, and not be imposed a direction because of some possible height advantage or natural skill that they're born with.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but it's interesting that when the LTD grants first came out, we proposed that we would do something at our fencing club that was essentially fundamental movement skills.
Okay.
And the only thing that would be fencing related, well, we're going to use those dollar store foamy things, and that would use as part of games. Like, they wouldn't have really learn to fence, right?
No.
And we promoted it as, we called it Foamies and Fundamentals, and that was gonna be our program. But because it was coming from the fencing club, we didn't get anybody to sign up. The only way we could do that program was we ended up incorporating it into our day camp program. And so the big part of the day camp program was really fundamental movement skills, and there was minimal amount of fencing happening. But I then thought, okay, this is a great idea, except that if people are thinking, well, I'm gonna go to a fencing club, so fundamental movement doesn't really make sense, so they wouldn't connect up doing fundamental movements in fencing, even though when we run our programs, that's an important part of it. But we don't actually tell them that, because it's almost like when you tell them that, they think, oh, well, I wouldn't go to a fencing club for that.
Yeah,
Right.
well, there's a huge education piece right now, right? That's why the LTAD grants, government's giving out, I think they started a couple of years ago. I just arrived at the branch a couple of months ago. But basically the LTAD grants was to make sure that people knew that LTAD existed, and how are you going to implement it? Like the NSOs put it out there, how are you going to implement it as a PSO? And how are you going to make sure it's getting to your club level, which is actually the people that are serving and giving out the programs, right? So making sure that it wasn't just staying with provincial teams. So those LTAD grants were there to ensure that proper implementation was in place. What we're realizing, and even in our first year of GoNB, is that there's people out there doing LTAD and don't even know that they're doing LTAD. Like, I'm getting grant applications, and most of my grant applications are saying, asking the question, are you doing an LTAD, are you using an LTAD program, what's the name of it? No. I'm like, so then I'm getting on the phone, and I'm like, yes, you are using an LTAD program. This is the name of the program you're actually using. So there's this awareness piece that is not there, that we are doing it sometimes. There are some times where we're just offering a program that doesn't align with anything that is done provincially or nationally. And that's when we want to, Sport Canada has invested a lot of money into LTAD. They want to make sure that people are using it, and people are changing the way competition structures are done, practices are ran, and things like that. So that's why I think GoNB this year, this bilateral with the federal government, is really pushing that LTAD driven. Everything, all the money that's going out is LTAD driven. Yeah, for this one.
And there is the Canadian Sport for Life LTAD for athletes with a disability resource as well. You're probably familiar with.
And some sports have specific ones. Like for example, swimming does the parent component directly in theirs. They're fully inclusive. Athletics does it as well. Hockey, sledge is part of Hockey Canada's, LTAD. Wheelchair basketball just came out with their LTAD a month ago, 2 months ago, something like that. So theirs is closely aligned to Basketball Canada, but they have their own. So there are sports that have their own, like rugby has their own.
So I was going to ask about, because you were saying you're looking at your coaching certification. Are you getting an NCCP certification in wheelchair basketball coaching?
I've taken my modules through Coach NB, but I am now doing my wheelchair basketball certification.
Okay, so are NSOs
in
general being encouraged to have a parasport coaching development program within their overall coaching development program? Because I know fencing isn't, because they're not doing very much of anything in coaching at the national level. I won't get into that. That's as much as I will say. And I would love to see the National Association actually have a component of coaching wheelchair fencing. I mean, I'd be there in a minute to do it.
There are some. I don't know each sport, but on Coaching Association of Canada, you can see which ones are available and which certifications are available. I know wheelchair basketball is one. Tennis,
so there are some
rugby, I'm not
each sport is
sure.
completely different, and so
Swimming has one, I know. Athletics has one.